Was brought to you by Rotary Central. For more than 110 years, Rotary members have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama. And now, Barbados. And Digicel, Cayman's bigger, better network. And Doctors Hospital. Peace of mind is important when life happens. Doctors Hospital, always there for you. Call 949-6066.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk Today.
What is on your mind, Cayman? If you are ready to talk, we are ready to listen. Here's your host, Stereling, Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, welcome and thanks for joining us on another magnificent Monday. Being the first Monday of the month, and it's our monthly mental health matters, and we want to invite you to be a part of our discussion. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Avoid any statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use indecent language or make any statement that is false or misleading. Call 1-800-534-8255, 949-6990, 949-8037, or WhatsApp us on 925-3261.
Email Talk Today at candw.ky. Let your voice be heard.
And now, back to Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, Radio Cayman Talk Today.
Hey, welcome back and thanks for joining us, and thanks too to Dr. Alexandra Borden for always helping us to not just feel great topics but fantastic panelists. So good afternoon, how are you?
Good, thank you, and thank you to yourself and Radio Cayman for always having us on. We really appreciate the platform for mental health, and I think it's done a lot in Cayman, so thank you.
No, thank you for that too, because in a decade plus now, I'm trying to think exactly how many years.
Yeah.
Consistently. And initially when we were trying to put this together, it was still somewhat of a taboo topic to speak to in a public domain. But I'm hopeful that we'll appreciate how important it is to be able to talk to someone about something that is bothering us, and it's not, well, in my view, not a weakness but a strength.
Absolutely.
And it may be that you only heard about something, you weren't there, it wasn't anywhere in your space. I think, for instance, that terrible earthquake in Haiti not long ago, where there was increasing concern that as our children are watching the evening news, because we have the television on, we want to be informed as a family, as a parent, how is that child seeing this thing? But not only the child, not only the adolescent, us as a parent, as an adult being bombarded. Do we become desensitized? Do we become so traumatized by it? So joining Dr. Borden is Dr. Colleen Brown, a child psychologist coming over from the States and visiting with us. Thank you for sitting in and sharing from your expertise as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I am looking forward to our conversation, since I haven't been able to attend in quite a long time because I do live in the States again, and I'm just looking forward to this conversation.
And I'm appreciative that you would come here, and I say that publicly because I think many times in our community, right here, not just on Grand Cayman, sometimes the person might be a frequent visitor to the Brac or Little Cayman, but within the context of the Cayman Islands, we have people who are frequent visitors, who are connected in some way. Maybe they used to, be here more frequently and they return. But it's a resource that we have that we don't have to tap into by paying, but we fail to tap it, consistently and constantly. And it's right there. It's a phone call away. It's a person willing to offer an experience, an expertise, and we should do that.
Oh, and absolutely. And I think especially, for the current topic we're going to be talking about today, unfortunately, the United States has had a lot of violence. So it's something that I am unfortunately well versed in.
Well, that topic, Dr. Boyle, sometimes we see, and just use the media generally and globally, sensationalize. It's presented in a way because there's a competition, to gain viewership, listenership, drive advertising, and not always in the most responsible nor sensitive of ways.
Yeah, fear drives the market essentially, right? So that's where a lot of times the media does focus on the negatives, which is where we wanted to kind of take the opportunity to talk about, especially what happened last week. Obviously, we've had this discussion many times between the pandemic and the earthquake and the potential tsunamis and everything else going on with the wars around the world. So I know we've had this discussion a couple of times, but especially in the wake of the shooting last week, we wanted just to use this show this week. So we've kind of shuffled the schedule a little bit to take the time to talk about it, because it's important for not only people who are there to understand what's happening, because a lot of times when people go through a traumatic experience, they can be overwhelmed with emotions, and a lot of that is going to actually be a normal reaction to trauma. But some people might have more difficulties and might be in need or benefit from some additional support. But I also think, especially because Cayman is such a small community, even a lot of people who weren't there are going to be greatly affected by what's going on.
And I want to ask, and I've been, not just reading, I find on a personal level, I want to know something, so I inquire. And the more, I dig into it, it's not a rabbit hole. I'm very conscious of that. And I don't want to be singularly focused on that thing. So I read something. I want to question, is this a sensible authority? What is the context of this thing? And then it leads to more questions. So I read to other, and to see if there's collaboration between what is being shared, but also what are some of the other competing, conflicting views by similar professionals. Not like an economist, you ask a question, you may get 3 different answers. Not that anyone is right or that they're all wrong. With that in mind, though, Dr. Colleen, I want to ask a few things. We have termed it, both in the media and in public sort of pronouncements, as a mass shooting. Is that what it was? Is that what it is? Is it even important to give it a label?
I think that it's less important as what label you give it as to how people are interpreting it, children or adults.
Right.
I think that that's really where how they interpret it and how they emotionally handle it, I think, is the important part.
Yeah. And I ask that to perhaps ask further that response. So both the support that we give to the wider community in terms of, the resource, like say through psychologists and professionals like yourself, hey, don't ignore what you're feeling. Maybe you are numb, and that's an unusual feeling. Maybe you're more numb than normal. A gentleman called, as an example, and he used the phrase, I wasn't there, I'm not involved with any sport, I feel shook up. Some people would immediately relate to what he's saying. Some would go, well, translate that. In a sense, he was traumatized, right? He was shook up, and he wasn't there. It was just something he heard about. Now, how do we take that on board, Dr. Borden?
Yeah, well, I think that's what I mean, like, especially in Cayman, anything that is traumatic violates a lot of our core beliefs, things that we hold to be deeply true. The world is a safe place is a common one, right? And so any kind of traumatic event, which generally involves some kind of life-threatening incident, violates that belief. Things like this, where something is done by another person intentionally, also violates the belief that bad things don't happen to good people, and the world is fair. So there's a lot of things, a lot of core beliefs that we have that are shaken up by a traumatic incident. But especially in Cayman, many people come here, and many of us stay here because Cayman is safe and these things don't happen here. And so, whereas we know there has been some rising crime in the community, we've not had something to this level before. And I do think, while mass shooting is kind of the label, I agree with Dr. Brown that, it's more how it's going to impact everything, right? That and how we understand it without glamorizing it as well.
So in addition, I would, want not just for my personal edification, but to invite through you, the public, to start thinking. So in addition to, hey, this thing is happening, let's not make this be the norm. Let us not be so paralyzed by fear that we don't act. We seek counseling. But secondly, in our response, whether through the general public calling on their parliamentarians or the police as a result of concerns for safety, that we don't yield too many of our rights and our freedoms and civil liberties, and we don't ask for greater fines and penalties and that sort of thing. Or if we do, what is the consequence of it in terms of the impact, deterrence, punishment, prevention, rehabilitation, and those notions. And by the same token, the idea that sometimes, given that we are a year out thereabouts from a general election, the call by the public, the voters in particular, and then the prospective politicians are going to be tough on crime. How will that be perceived and welcome? And then the net result is, in a police state, is there a way to balance, that's fear as a result of some action that is like this, and that safety and security and stability and civility that we want in a society? Are they competing? Can they be, to your expertise in the U.S., can they be things that are achievable?
I think, unfortunately, this is something the U.S. has been grappling with for some time now. I think that, if I think of it from a psychological perspective and what's been shown among the psychologists in America, it tends to be that we're trying to look a lot more at prevention and looking at a lot, why are people getting involved with shootings? Why is there a need for the guns in the first place? What are some prevention activities we can provide for younger people, things like that they can get involved in that are more positive, so that way the path isn't really grown for them to go down that path where they have to commit these type of actions. But like I said, in America, it's definitely been a hot button topic that's been going on for quite some time. And I think that there's a lot of opinions, and I think that's why it's still an issue in America.
And is it something that we, the collective we, would leave for them being the politicians, the parliamentarians and the like, to come up with the solutions? Or is it that we, the general public, actually should have a say and must have a say?
This really is about support within the community and ties within the community. So the change comes from us, but we do need the support of government and the political structure in order to make changes, right? And as Dr. Brown was saying, the problem is not the shooting. The shooting is a symptom of a much bigger issue that has been going on in Cayman and growing as well. So it will be important for government to support any initiatives and changes to be going on, and a lot of efforts towards prevention are far more helpful than it's great to have the police out and to intervene, but we've also seen similar patterns in the past, and more police is not always the answer. It might help immediately, it might just change the way that things continue, and so that's where ultimately prevention efforts would be more helpful. But it really comes from the community coming together around people to try to support each other and get help for anyone who might be struggling with anything earlier on, whether it's financial stress, difficulties accessing education and jobs, difficulties with housing, people who struggle to meet their daily needs are going to be under far more strain and more likely to result to impulsivity and other options in order to try to meet their needs or to deal with the strain that they experience.
Right. No. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. But all of us might be scared. We might be shocked. We might be going through a lot of different things as we're hearing about this, and I think it's frustrating feeling like there's not a lot that we can do, but knowing that all of us pulling together is what's going to be most helpful in supporting each other, and not waiting for government to fix it either. But all of us might be going through feelings of shock, disbelief. There might be trouble sleeping, might be especially anyone who was there or immediately close to someone who was immediately impacted by it, might have more severe symptoms. But even other people, as I said, it violates some of the core beliefs. So they might be experiencing as well difficulties with focusing and concentrating, fears about what's going to happen. There might be stomach aches, headaches, because it activates the fight or flight system within the body. So all of this can come about, and this will be common reactions to trauma, right? Because this is something that's scary. We don't know what's going to happen. I know the police are working on it, but there's still questions. Will there be any kind of rebounds from it, or other incidents that will follow on from it, right? How could this happen? There's so many questions and what ifs about it.
Right.
that all of us might have any of these experiences with it. Difficulties, maybe even changes with appetite, eating more, eating less, shaking, racing heart rate, all of these things, especially because there's so much about it in the media, that if it is something that you are impacted by or worried about, knowing that exposure to the media, as well as you had mentioned earlier, can increase these symptoms as well.
All right. When you come after the break, we take some calls, and those who want to join is 949-8037. Nope, 949-6990. So you got one landline and then the 925-3261. Join us after the break.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I'm going flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Your dream home starts with a vision, and often inspiration is at the heart of that vision. Brand Source Home Gallery's in-house designers are here to help bring your vision to life. Whether you're remodeling or building a new home, Brand Source Home Gallery is your one-stop solution. Explore their kitchen cabinets, sinks, faucets, bath fixtures, tubs, vanities, and more. Let Brand Source's designers help and inspire you with your next project. Call 623-5000 and schedule an appointment with a design expert at Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park, serving Cayman for 50 years.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Dwayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skin care, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drporterkman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Family Resource Center celebrates the 25th anniversary of Honoring Women Month throughout March with a full calendar of events offered to honor women's accomplishments and build further awareness of the gender-specific issues affecting women and girls. Key events include their International Women's Day Gala on March 8th with keynote speaker Desiree Phillips, who will host 3 additional workshops inspired by this year's theme, #Inspire Inclusion, between March 10th and 13th. On March 9th, the Inspire Her Girls Conference will provide female students aged 13 to 18 years the opportunity to connect and learn from female leaders in the STEM field and other industries. The annual Color Me Purple 5K is on the 24th, where every participant will earn their own medal. Join the Family Resource Center for their full month of celebrations as they recognize this incredible milestone. To view their calendar of events and to register, visit frc.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us. 949-6990, as we welcome you to be a part of our monthly Mental Health Matters. Dr. Alexandra Warden and Dr. Colleen Brown visiting us from the States. If I may ask you, those freshly sanitized and wonderfully refreshed headsets, you please, put them on. I use mine to keep my hair in place. You guys might find it helpful. We do have a call. And now, Dr. Warden, as we take the call, our monthly show, right, for the monthly Mental Health Matters. This one is, Community Support and Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
What's the full title of our program today?
Right, yes, sir. Well, for anyone who might be affected by it, so just looking at resources for recognizing things that are going on, what's a normal reaction, when might you want to get help, where can you go to get help. Cayman actually has a lot of free services and resources available.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we wanted to share with everyone, that it is okay to ask for help and that there's a lot of help available on island in different capacities depending on your level of need and what you're comfortable with.
All right. And we'll focus on that. And I'll also ask, somewhere about how are we expected to respond as a community and how are we proposing to respond as sort of the policy policing arm. But let's take this call. Hey, welcome. Thanks for calling. Yeah. Hello. Okay. Well,
hello?
Yeah. Welcome. Hello.
Yeah. Important subject you got on the.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And listening to a lot of the discussions that going on this prime subject, I think, unless I've been missing it all, that there's not much emphasis being put on, should I say, the genetic side of this base subject that you're discussing, because I think that is a very important link in all of this mental stuff that's being correlated. And I maybe your doctors there can say whether there's any research that shows that people are born with maybe a inclination, call it a genetic inclination or hereditary or whatever you want to call it, to at some stage maybe developing mental illness, as you put it, in broad terms.
No, hang on if you wish, Dr. Brown.
Sure. I was going to talk about, there are some disorders that could have some genetic links. For example, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia have some strong genetic links. However, I think when we're talking about more violence or we're talking about violent acts, that tends to be much more based on the environment or environmental factors that come into play, whether it comes to having, low socioeconomic status, so basically lower financial standing, lower education levels, things like that, lower opportunity, things like that. There can also be a component of early childhood trauma, so that's something to keep into account. So they're finding more and more that the more things that someone goes through as a child, the more it starts to impact adulthood. So there's a huge study on it that had to do with adverse childhood events. So the ACEs study that looked at childhood events, and the more of these things that you go through, you're more likely to have a number of different issues in adulthood. It could be neglect, exposure to domestic violence, community violence, drug or alcohol use in your household, heavy drug or alcohol use in your household. These type of things, the more someone experiences, the more likely they are as an adult to not only possibly commit violent acts, but also to undergo different health issues, mental health issues, a gamut of different things. Now, that's not to say that if someone has a bad life when they're a child, they're automatically going to grow up to be a bad person, right? There's also resilience factors as well. So, for example, if someone has a very negative upbringing or has some difficulties in their life, but then they have a coach who is a very close figure who is able to offer support, or they have a very strong teacher in a classroom, things like that. A very close grandmother who helps in, very close, religious or church group. These kind of things can help a person to be able to foster more positive results. So I think that that's the part, honestly, and I am a child psychologist, so obviously this is the part that, does hold my interest a lot. Those really core times in early childhood, I think that we really have to focus on those to try to make some changes as people enter adolescence and adulthood.
Well, what if it's known or believed that this child could have a genetic or whatever the word, hereditary or whatever you want, predisposition to, developing or having some traces of mental illness?
Early diagnosis and intervention is what's going to be most helpful in most cases. So if there are any concerns, the best thing to do is start with your pediatrician. Go talk to them, see what's going on. If it's your first child, sometimes it's hard to know what's normal, what's not normal. As kids go through different developmental stages, there's different things to expect. The pediatrician and the child's classroom teacher can give a lot of input and feedback. If there are concerns, they can refer yourself to a child psychologist, like Dr. Brown was just sharing how some of the work that she does. There's a lot of psychologists, not only in the schools, but also in the community that are available for support. So if there are any concerns, the sooner you can start talking to a professional, the better. It might just be something developmental, and they might be like, it's fine, it should resolve with age. If it doesn't come back, maybe it's something that you watch, or maybe it is something of concern that they can be like, yes, and then the sooner you can get support in for that child, the better.
Okay, but in all the research that's gone on, are there any markers that maybe come up? Well, I'm talking in early childhood that connects this hereditary or genetic predisposal to mental illness?
So it's basically a perfect storm is what it comes down to. So there are genetic, predispositions, just like there's genetic predispositions to eye color, things like that, right? But it's kind of like a recipe. So when somebody has genetic predispositions for things, it can happen, but there also has to be other factors in play too. There has to be social factors, environmental factors that kind of, make it into the perfect recipe to make sure that something does happen in a positive or negative way. So that's pretty much how it works. So that way it's not so black and white as, this leads to this. It's hard because I think mental health is so different than physical health in that way. That it can be difficult. However, there are a lot of assessments that can be done in early childhood for early childhood interventions and things like that can mark like, yes, this child would definitely benefit from some additional help to make sure they go on a positive track. Another thing that I think has been really beneficial, and I am so sorry that it's been a few years since I lived here, so I'm not sure where they're at with this, but I know Alex Panton Foundation was trying to bring a lot of emotional learning classes into a lot of the elementary schools to teach kids coping skills, positive things that maybe they aren't getting from their environment otherwise, so that way we have kids that are a little bit more well-rounded that might try to give more of that recipe of positive rather than ending up negative.
Well, but I don't think, looking at it from a holistic standpoint, I don't believe there's been any promotion on, alerting parents. You can't alert the baby. It won't do any good at that stage. But alerting parents that if they think that there may be a genetic or a hereditary connection to mental illness in the whole sphere of what we're talking about, that they make it known early. That way, maybe they can pick up on some of the markers that, just go over people's heads. Anyway, I was just curious because I'm not sure how much research has been done in the Cayman perspective, but And I believe that parents probably have this information, or at least I think most of them are probably aware of it. But if it's not passed on forward, then I think the whole thing, the whole process gets more difficult and probably more serious.
Right. So the catch with mental illness is that there's no blood test, there's no definitive test for what's going on. As Dr. Brown said, it's a mixture of genetic predispositions as well as psychological and social factors that come into play. So while they're always trying to identify different genes that will affect different things, there's no clear-cut test or way of assessing that. What we look for would be family history, looking at have other family members been affected by mental illness. Difficult because a lot of times in Cayman, because mental health is a newer field. Sometimes family members haven't gotten help, haven't gotten diagnosis, or when they have gone in for treatment, maybe the family's not aware of what's going on. So generally it would be from taking a family history and observations and interactions with the family and with the child. So most schools now have a school psychologist and/or counselor or a chaplain. So generally there is someone in most of the schools that are there to help support, and they can then do referrals if additional support is needed. But in addition to looking at the genetic factors for violence, I think it's also important to outline that for people who were exposed to it. So people who have a family history or genetic predisposition for anxiety might be more greatly affected by traumatic events, and or people who've been exposed to traumatic events before. There can also be a cumulative effect of trauma as well, and that's where each person will react differently to what's going on. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, muchas gracias for this.
Es un placer, señor. All right. As I look across the pond, I see the light yonder. We got to pause and take a break. When we come back, we'll talk today.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Discover your dream home with Cayman National's home loan. Get up to 95% financing, repayment up to 40 years, and just a 0.5% commitment fee. Your interest rate? Depending on your risk factors, it'll be fixed or variable. Plus, you get a pre-approved credit card. This is a limited time offer. Dial 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Cayman Turtle Center is doing it again. Get ready to crawl, walk, or run. Lace up your sneakers and join us as we strive for conservation on March 17th at the 4th Annual Turtle Crawl 5K Walk Run, hosted by the Cayman Turtle Center. For just $25, you can be a part of this incredible event with every step you take supporting the conservation efforts for the majestic green sea turtles of the Cayman Islands. Sign up today at turtlecrawl.ky and secure your spot in this unforgettable experience. We extend a huge thank you to our amazing sponsors: Advanced Fire and Plumbing, CG Britke, CUC, Gatorade, DMS Broadcasting, Blue Water Medical Supplies, Yanni's Photography, Double M Distribution, Corporate Electric, Cryo 345, and Radio Cayman. Join us bright and early on Sunday, March 17th at 6:30 a.m. at the Cayman Turtle Center. Register now and don't miss out on the fun.
Join Water Authority for the grand opening of its Cayman Brac Customer Service Office at the Avistar Building, Friday, 8 March, 10 a.m. till 12 noon. If you register for the new customer portal account or apply for piped water service, you will be entered for a chance to win a new phone or a water service gift certificate. Plus, you can meet the team and enjoy some refreshments. It all happens on Friday, 8 March, 10 a.m. Social media, X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Interact with our talk shows on YouTube. Download our official Radio Cayman app, or you can log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky. You can also add us to WhatsApp
on 925-3261.
All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Radio Cayman. Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Thanks very much to Dr. Alexandra Borden for always being so willing to step up and step in to ensure that we have, this level of participation in a monthly mental health matters. And to our colleague, Dr. Colleen Brown, visiting over from the U.S. I wonder to what extent, as we have these discussions publicly, that people will, pay attention and either out of that innate fear, you know what, I'm not going to get involved, or out of a sense, well, I was there, not me, and they both lead them to sort of tune out and to disconnect. How do we make sure that people see this as something of national importance, whether it's a large country in Europe or it's a small island nation like this, that it's a national pressing issue that needs, a sort of concerted effort collectively. Dr. Brown?
I have a lot more faith that because this country is small, and I think because, something that I thought about, the shooting happened the day before I arrived for vacation, and I saw that it happened, and I was shocked, to be honest. I was shocked because these things happen in the States all the time, right? I hate the fact that they happen in the States, but they do. And I was very surprised that this happened here. But I think because this island is small and because it has such a close-knit community, I have more faith that some things can be resolved or be worked on more here than they could in a bigger country. One thing that's happened in the United States that I think is just unfortunate is a sense of, it's not apathy, but it's more, it happens so often.
Desensitize?
It's very, yes, there's a desensitization because it's burnout, basically, because you get so frustrated and you want to do something so badly, but there's nothing, you feel like there's nothing you can do.
All right.
And I think that, because there's so many people who really want to work on the community here, I think I have higher hopes that things will be able to be worked on here more quickly than in the States.
I want to maybe pick up on that because I think this needs to be a collective response, and I want us to not allow cliches to come into our jargon and we just accept it. But to your point, that sort of being desensitized as a society. Take this siren. Right. Growing up, you heard a siren, you could distinguish whether it's police, fire, or ambulance. Now it's constant. Whether we think at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning through a neighborhood, the police needs to be wailing and then waking up the community and frightening people, or whether that's so commonplace that you accept it. Coupled with the amount of people, not just the sheer number, but their experiences from where they come. You live in a big city, you probably have a siren constantly. You're in some space way out in the boonies, you may not hear it. So with that, does that lead us then to believe that the police presence creates in us a false sense of safety? And I want to maybe ask more from two perspectives, if I might. Being sensitive to how we will look at it. I think fear paralyzes, it creates in us a sense of urgency. Not just the flight or fight response from the individual, but the call on the policing apparatus, the policymakers. You got to do something. You got to shut down the country, and are we quick now because this thing is unprecedented to do what some have shared? I wrote it down. Never let a good crisis go to waste. We heard that being used now in the press briefings. We heard it used the last time when everybody was under house arrest. under that thing that affected the whole world, and we end up being, turned sideways. So with this, are we at a risk in a society? One, you know what, this happens, it's just a normal escalation. So, it happens elsewhere, get used to it. Or two, inviting the policing apparatus to respond in such a way. More guns, more urban commandos, more police armed patrols, more search and seizures, a police state.
I think
as a
that,
visiting professor?
It's a big question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that I would advise Cayman, and I'm not the person to ask about the politics or
no,
because I'm not from here.
No, that's not it. Yeah.
However, based on America, I would say that use this as an opportunity to plan in numerous ways. I don't think it should just be a police response. I don't think that that's going to be beneficial. One of the big things that's been coming up around the country in America has been, well, let's have more people armed, right?
Yeah.
To stop the, individuals from being able to come in somewhere armed, have more people armed. Regardless of whether or not you agree with that, idea or not, I think that, we've brought up there's a couple different components that need to be covered as well. The preventative matters, right? That's the most important part is prevention. Trying to have programs in place to help people way before these issues occur. So I think that what's going to be important is to look at it from numerous perspectives and get the experts in all of those areas to say, okay, how do we stop these things from happening before they even happen? Mm-hmm. Right? So that we're not just having a reactive response, you're having more of a proactive response.
Also prevention versus upon a cure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, as you go into the break, we're seeing the notion of prisons for profit in the U.S., right? And it's probably good, at least in my mind, to benchmark, to use something that is known. And the U.S. has great statistics. We have a lot of media coverage. Here in Cayman, this is, until now, for some, unexpected, unprecedented, and a surprise. For others, it was just a natural sort of escalation as to what would come. So when we return from the break and we ask about not just the recovery, but how we as a community should now respond. We've alluded to it. But let's expound on it further to see where we are. What is it? Is it that more policing increases in our minds a greater a false sense of security? Is it that the community will withdraw and be paralyzed because of fear? Will we do this? And not so much the political responses as more of the societal consequences of action and inaction. All right, when we come back, we'll talk today.
We are Radio Cayman,
covering Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, and Grand Cayman.
1 in a million. From Radio Cayman's newsroom, this is Headlines. Local, regional, international news.
With a look at your latest headlines, I'm Ebanks. The Central Caribbean Marine Institute's Reefs Go Live flagship education program has returned. CCMI says that the program live streams directly from underwater on the coral reefs in Little Cayman to students in classrooms around the world in real time. After an unprecedented year for stress on Cayman's coral reefs, CCMI says this season focuses on education about our fascinating marine world, the threats posed to it, and what can be done by everyone in their daily lives and through scientific research to protect the reefs for future generations. This season will see 4 broadcasts, namely Our Physical Ocean on Friday the 22nd of March, Researching on the Reef on Friday the 12th of April, Reproduction on the Reef on Wednesday the 8th of May, and Corals in Climate Change, a dive into the future of coral reefs on Friday the 7th of June. Details can be found on the CCMI website. Schools in Jamaica on Tuesday will observe Peace Day 2024 amid concerns of increased violence at schools across the island. Last October, Education Minister Fayval Williams said that the island is facing an epidemic of violence amongst their children. Williams said that the plan is to reduce the level of violence in schools by 50% by November 2023. That's a look at your latest headlines. I'm Ebanks.
More news available at www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Check out our social media pages: Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, Radio Cayman Headline News.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
James Heber Arch, 1868-1943.
Pastor James Arch, the husband of Virginia F. Arch and the father of 11 children, was converted in 1905 during revival services held by Elder Richard Russell in Georgetown. He was a founder of the Church of God Full Gospel Hall and donated the property for the original church building, which he built in Arches Square, which is still standing. He became an elder in 1908 and in 1925 was ordained a pastor, a position he held until his death. In 1942, he secured the waterfront property in Georgetown, where the present church building now stands. Mr. Arch was an outstanding shipwright who passed on his talents to his 6 sons. His shipyard built many of the famous schooners of his day. He was known for his generosity and kindness.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to Dr. Alexandra Warden and Dr. Colleen Brown. She's coming across. Thanks for letting us, as I shared earlier, to tap into a resource that is within our community. You can share, not just from your experience in the U.S., your expertise, as a trained psychologist. This is concerning, I think, for everybody. I can imagine the parliamentarian, the police officer, the general public. But if we close our eyes and sort of bury our heads in the sand, will that solve it? If we choose to respond in a particular way, as one police commissioner acknowledged way back when he said, in this case, when they raided an old lady's house, they probably took a sledgehammer to crack a nut. But then maybe the public is demanding, well, you better do something, and they want to see a show of force. Take this line, and of course, with respect to Dr. Brown, since you're our visitor, we'll always defer to you first, right?
I think that, I'm going to again, go back to it may not be the most big response, that is visible. But I think something that I talked about a couple of years ago when I spoke at the Alex Patton Foundation convention was we talked about looking at childhood trauma. What do kids look like that have been traumatized? So, the kid that has been traumatized by this event may not be cowering, shaking in a corner, looking scared. And I think that's important to think about in regards to not only the shooting, but in general with kids who have gone through childhood trauma, is to remember that those kids might look like they have behavior issues. They might look like angry kids. They might look like they have, sadness. They might have different, responses like that, some aggression issues. Those could be traumatized children. So we need to look at those children in a different way and not look at them as a problem. Look at them like a bad seed. We need to look at them as individuals who need help. Did something bad happen? Some things like that, and try to help them in a positive way through counseling and just support in general in the community. And I think that's super important because those kids need the help so that they can grow up and they can have more positive lives themselves.
As we speak to that, today's theme of community support and recovery, if we go to prevention, let me ask, it would appear that whatever we do now is like planting a tree. At some point, hopefully it will bear fruit or produce the shade, but that's not going to be tomorrow or a 4-year election cycle or even 10 years necessarily. Right. Dr. Warden?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's where programs like APF's, the socio-emotional training, Zippy, I think is who it is,
Yeah.
which is now actually in all of the schools. So that's really important to help kids understand, right? Because mental health is something we didn't talk about before. Trauma is not something we talked about before. Anytime we work with new clinicians on island, is one of the things I say. You can ask, have you ever been through a traumatic experience? And people that grew up here are going to tell you no. And then you start to hear about the things that happened. So our understanding of mental health and mental illness and trauma is very limited and growing, like thankfully to things like our shows. But it's important to understand that we don't have the words for it. We don't understand it. We don't know how it's impacted, which means that if the parents don't understand it, then the kids aren't getting those words either, right? And a lot of times the West Indian way is quite a harsh disciplinarians as well, that and so the ways are not really conducive to open conversations and understanding things, which are really necessary with the things kids face these days, thanks to the internet and whatnot, that kids are being exposed to a lot more things these days, and it's important to have that connection and that support there.
We're talking about children, right? Sorry, Dr. Boyd.
Yeah. But I think building in the protective factors that Dr. Brown was talking about is what's really important, right? When kids come to me, and I don't see many kids, but when they do, if it's anxiety, ADHD, depression, whatever it is, generally my first action is something called behavioral activation and building in positive supports, right? Getting the kids involved in sports activities, getting them connected to the youth group at church, getting them connected with arts groups, depending on whatever is important to the child to build pro-social supports, right? There's this theory by Hershey that looks at not why do people commit crimes, but why do people not commit crimes?
Yeah.
Right, depending whether you're Hobbesian or Locke or believe in Locke. So I think that's really interesting, and that's, from a mental health perspective, the more positive pro-social inputs we have, the more protective factors, the better we are at building resilience and managing stress and difficulties that come up, and keeps us from going down a path that puts us in a situation where we might run into that, or it gives us the resilience and tools to deal with things when we come across traumatic incidents. So I think that's something that's important for all of us to note, is that for everyone, the more community support that we have, the more resilient and more protective factors we're going to have in our lives at all ages.
Yeah. So as I listen to you, a number of things jump out, and again, both of you, but we always have greater and more frequent and more almost direct access to you, Dr. Borden, but Dr. Brown, you're always welcome. We seem to, in a society and even as individuals, as parents, always look at the bad way they, in the report card, 10 A's and 1 B, and why did you get a B? You're not celebrating the child just did some great things. That inability or unwillingness or almost develop sense of focusing on the negative. Why are they doing this? Not as opposed to why are so many not doing this? Is it then that we need to inculcate into our society an ethos that looks at respect and manners and those things that were presumably taught to some of us but are being lost now when we blame other things? Dr. Brown and Dr. Borden, is it that we are seeing those things as being a little bit too airy-fairy and out there to touchy-feely, so they don't matter? And if we don't hit and deal with this negative behavior, that's going to become the norm as opposed to highlighting and celebrating the more frequent and better behavior.
So I think there's a couple different things that you're touching on, and I think the one is, a lot of kids, when they are developing, need 7 positive interactions to every 1 negative, especially when a kid has some sort of mental health issues. One that comes up very common is ADHD, for example. A child with ADHD that's constantly moving around, touching things, getting out of their seat, things like that. They're going to get don't stop, quit, stop, right? Those kind of things constantly. So they're getting basically 7 negatives to 1 positive instead. That can lead to some really negative outcomes if you think about it. So in a way, but why do we come to the negative first, and why do we look at negative first is it's kind of evolutionary if you think about it. We, back in the day when we really had to worry about, safety all of the time and worrying about whether a big angry bear was going to eat us, as cavemen, we had to worry because if we did not pay attention to the negative, we would die, right? So our brains are still programmed to think that way. So we look for negative. It's really, it's basically doing, you know, a lot of like gym curls for your brain is kind of, you know, this process of trying to change the way you look at things. And that's part of what we do in therapy, because changing the way we look at things is what's important, because we do have to create that more, foster that more positive environment for children. Now, you know, in a way, somebody could say, okay, well, you're being a little bit too fluffy, a little bit too. I don't think so. I don't think that it doesn't, we don't have to constantly be praising, right? We don't constantly have to be very positive, but I think it's important to acknowledge both sides. You know, I think a middle ground is okay. You know, I think that that's fine. I think, but, you know, just not instantly being punitive is the important part.
Well, and I think having that balance is important, because I also think the other side is that not only are emotions, this kind of stuff, fluffy, but we tend to be very punitive, and Caymanians are all about, and West Indians tend to be all about respect and force, which is hard then, because it's also important in this day and age to be assertive, to understand what your needs are and be okay asking for it. So it really requires both. And that can be hard for parents to instill in kids when they weren't raised that way themselves. So helping the kids to understand their emotions, understand what's going on, and being able to express their needs is important too. Because I think especially in this day and age where we have such a diverse community, it's really important to be able to speak up and say what is needed as well.
Okay, we do have another caller, our guests for the monthly Mental Health Matters show, Dr. Alexandra Boyden and Dr. Colleen Brown. As we go to our phones, welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dwayne.
Hey, good to hear from you, man. How are you?
All right, man. Kind of listening very deeply into what I'm hearing.
Always appreciate you sharing, my friend. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you to the people trying to give their best into the community and into the, you know, I guess the rest of the world. What they're trying to say is, you know, we all need to try to help each other, you know, and kind of understand that. I would like to ask them, say, what do you think the outcome of mentality of a person that doesn't have a family structure?
I think it depends on whether or not the person has other individuals in their life that could be positive influences. I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be family. I often talk to clients about revisiting their idea of what is family. Family doesn't need to be blood, because you have to surround yourself with people who bring you to a better, more positive place. And sometimes that's not who you are blood related to, and that's okay. You know, your version of family can be very different than anybody else's version of family. And I think when it comes to, I've worked both here and in the States with a number of children who have had a lot of difficulties with family and who have not been living with their families. And I think that if we're able to create a close-knit, supportive environment around them that they can just define as their own family, it can be beneficial.
Okay. So a single parent home has no different outcome.
No,
on the person.
I think that family has been defined in so many different ways. Single parent households, dual parent households, people who, you know, if it's auntie raising the children, you know, or grandma or things like that. I don't think that there is much of a difference as long as it's supportive and loving. That's where the key pretty much comes from, is it's less who is in the household and more how those parents or those caregivers work with that child or, you know, respond to that child.
Right. Okay. Thank you. The last thing I would share with you, because I don't see it anymore. I don't see it on the internet because I have a downloaded PDF on it. It's a book that was done in the Ronald Reagan era. Nancy Reagan sent this woman to Jamaica. I don't know if you're familiar. You can stop me anytime if you're familiar with the book. But Nancy Reagan sent a woman to Jamaica, try to see or try to come out with the ganja made people crazy, made kids crazy, right? Something like that. Send someone down there for one man there, and she did the 2 studies. She did it for I think 18 years, 20 years, and she came back. She wrote the book. And the book says children that come out from the sugarcane area, is more hyper and more less the concentrated schoolwork. The children that came out from the ganja farm area is the ones that paid attention and the ones that came out with more empathy and more loving ways. That's what she did in the book. So Nancy Reagan dismissed the book and dismissed the lady and didn't publish the book really, but she went on to get sponsors and she sponsored the book by herself. But I can't find it on the internet anymore. I can't find it in the library anymore. Where I found the book was in year 7. That was at the Georgia High School. I found that and I read that book and it kind of intrigued me into understanding, but I can't download it anymore. If you ever find the book, give that book a read, and I would like to see you back on the show after you read the book. Have a nice day.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And this is where I think, access to information that is reviewed, critiqued with a view to saying how can we apply it, not just, generally, but specific. So with that in the Cayman context, like the caller, I'm very interested in us as a society now seeing this thing, not dismissing this impact globally, but what and how will we respond locally.
Well, and I think, from that, I think that's where we as a community can step in. A lot of times kids that come from difficult homes maybe aren't as well socialized. They don't have the social skills to build strong relationships. So rather than just seeing a kid as a weird kid, maybe reaching out. I think when Cayman was much smaller, more of a homogenous society, everyone knew everyone was related, everyone looked out for everyone. And that was very different from where we're at today, where the community is so diverse and people are often afraid of stepping on toes or interfering with other people. Yeah. So I think, if you are able to be that coach or be that teacher or be that person for someone, that's important. And that's where all of us need to come together. And that if you do notice someone, a kid or an adult who's struggling, it's fair to reach out and talk to them and see what's going on. And even if you are not inclined or prepared to deal with what's going on, have some idea of the resources available, because Cayman has so much available to anyone.
I'm wondering, and I certainly won't ask now for our panel, but of course your personal views are always welcome. But as a wider community, we talk about homogenous societies, and as you shared, I went back immediately to 2 things. Just look at the Nordic countries, for instance, and you can see in those societies that there is a homogeneous society, but we also can see the impact and influence of others coming through, whether it's immigration, whether it's through refugees or whatever is transpiring, and what and how those societies are having to respond relative to maybe teaching and education, maybe housing and the like. And then I translate to the Cayman context where not long ago, we may have seen it to be more homogenous. But today, it may be more homogenous, but not with the Caymanian ethos and representation. If you look at a statistical distribution, is there a shift in trend? If so, what does that mean? How does that impact, if any, if you follow the intellect trying to be, pensive?
Yeah. Anytime there is an influx of people in immigration or into any community, the community goes into a state of anomie where it has to figure out how does everyone fit in, what are the values and norms that we follow, and how do we all make sense of this together. And that takes time, right? And it takes input, and it takes all the community members wanting to put input and wanting to go through the process. Communities that are more diverse do rely more on laws for that, as opposed to kind of the natural socialization processes that take place. The difficulty with Cayman is that we've grown so much so quickly. Then we got hit, right? And that was huge in the past I don't know, 50 years or so. We've grown so much from so many different places. Then we get hit by things like 2004 with Ivan. Boom, everyone's gone. Boom, everyone comes back in, but it's a whole new set of people, right?
Yeah.
And even when Cayman is stable from whatever disaster might be going on, the community is so transient, right? Because of the different laws and regulations, which I know are there for a reason and important because the island is so small. But then it also stops this process of us establishing new social norms. So it's really difficult, especially while we're still growing with thousands of new people coming in every year, bringing their own experiences and beliefs and cultures and traditions.
And then that piece, well, if you wish to jump in, Dr. Brown.
No, I think that's it. I mean, I agree with everything Dr. Bowden is saying. And something when I resided on island and I did work on island, something I think is very important is I might be an expert in psychology and I might be an expert with children, but I'm also American. So therefore, I think it's extremely important for people that do come in from outside of, Cayman to remember that. And something I was very careful when I worked here was to ask Caymanians like what their culture was like, and was what I was saying integrating well with their culture, or was it completely conflicting? Because that's important to have interventions that work with the culture. And I thought that was very important because I may be an expert in all these other areas, but I'm not an expert on Cayman. I was not raised here.
So, and this is something that I'm hoping that I will try to facilitate in future discussions, because it's important for the community to have a unified voice. We can be respectful of our individual, sort of differences, but let them unify us. So there are two things I wanted to ask, and you set me up perfectly to bring that in. One, that individual that is speaking, as a Caymanian, are they reflecting the values and the norms and that cultural ethos, given the shift in dynamic, again, just from the population statistics? And then, how does that translate into it? And secondly, you use the word expert. With great respect, I'm just asking to what extent we ensure that the people, or educators, or coaches, since you're psychologists, the psychologists and the counselors, that they are bona fide. No one would want to go to a physician who is a neurologist, neurosurgeon, and not be absolutely assured that this person is not just qualified and competent, but has good outcomes. Are we ensuring that the psychologists and the counselors and the therapists and all of those who are talking to our people are actually competent?
So anyone that you see as far as counseling or therapy or psychology or really any medical profession goes, so there's boards that manage, councils that manage all the different professions. Any medical doctor or dentist would be covered by the Medical Dental Council. Pharmacists and pharmacies are managed with, pharmacists are managed with the Pharmacy Council. Pharmacies and healthcare facilities are managed, and some of those are even spas, right, are managed by the Health Practice Commission. And then we've got the Nursing and Midwifery Council for any of the nurses and midwives, and CPAM actually manages 46 different professions. And so if you're seeing anyone, you have any questions, any professional should be able to tell you what their training is and show you their license, right? Healthcare facilities are required as part of their annual renewal that they have to have the licenses of the providers on display.
Okay, and I don't want to belabor that, certainly I don't want to be...
No, it's okay. If there are any concerns, HPB users at gov.ky, or give a call to the Health Practice Commission over at and we also have a desk available from 10 to 2 each day. So please feel free to call us or email us, contact us in some way, let us know any concerns or any questions. You can also look up the register to see if someone is licensed on the website.
Right. So as lawyers and doctors, we expect, and we know that they will be licensed and they can't, go out and present themselves as such. So just generally speaking, we got words like psychologists and counselor and therapy, and there are other similar terms. If a person, is saying that he or she is one of those things, we can ask that person, they should be able to produce something to say that they're licensed. If we want verification, we can go and get it.
For sure.
Okay.
And please do. And that was actually what our show today was supposed to be on. So that will be coming shortly. Because I think that's really important. And I think Cayman, not only, is this kind of a new area that we're getting into, but it's really important to mental health. But it's really important to know the rights that we have when we see doctors, therapists, psychologists as well.
Now, I appreciate you letting me ask that. And that's, again, not to, I'm like that person that will trust but wants to verify. And if people today are feeling, still shook up, still feeling out of sorts, traumatized, they may want to speak to someone.
Absolutely.
But they want to make sure that person they speak to is, legitimately qualified and licensed.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Any of the professionals should be able to tell you what their training is, what they're trained in, and what their license is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's free counseling services available through government, through the Department of Counseling Services at the Counseling Center, 949-8789. Family Resource Center also does a lot of services for parents, co-parenting, and they actually have a group program for children as well, and they're available at 949-0006. And there's also the Alex Panton Foundation, which runs support groups. There's some ones available for teens online, and that's free and confidential as well. And there's a lot of private providers too that are available.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've got, actually, Colin's got them written down. we've got some support resources that have just rebranded, as well as some new ones coming online as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely, I was excited to see online Alex Panton is going to be launching the Kids Helpline on March 7th. The number for that is 5437. And I was excited to see that there is another helpline that came about, I guess, during COVID, K-Mind, 1-800-534-6463. And also Alex's Place, which was launched at HSA for 10 years old through 20 years old, and that's 244-7856.
Thanks very much. If I might, Dr. Brown, ask you one question.
Sure.
Certainly be a follow-up. And this is speaking to the fact that we're talking about children and providing a resource for them, but sometimes our parents also need not only to be able to recognize, but know how to assist. So those numbers would be useful. And then as a wider community, we may, as parents, we're watching the media globally, we've seen them respond. We have hurricane preparedness and training. Some societies have drills for other things.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a very sensitive thing, but I'm concerned that we, in believing we're doing a good thing and responding a certain way, could only be adding fuel to the fire, making it worse. These mass shooter training and the like, any particular thoughts, if I may ask about? I mean, I can see doing CPR training helpful, hurricane preparedness training perhaps, but drills can be in and themselves terrifying, more harm than good. What's your view on this mass shooter?
I think that, to be honest, I mean, I know that there's a lot of counselors that might differ in my viewpoint on this. I don't think they're very helpful, to be honest. I think that they can be very difficult for kids who suffer from any kind of anxiety or have unfortunately gone through something previously. Professionally, I have written a number of letters in the States, as mass shooter trainings are much more common there. Letters for children to state that, they're to be made very much aware when these things will occur, because it itself can be extremely traumatizing, thinking that something is happening when it's not really. Right. So I think that that's important to keep in mind. As with any children, routine, consistency, all of these things are extremely important when it comes to anxiety and trauma. So keeping that stuff in mind with all of these is extremely important.
Yeah, if you notice any difficulties in your child, or feel like they might be struggling, and that, like Colleen said, it might be anger, it might be acting out, they might be withdrawn, they might be tearful, they might have nightmares, anything that's going on, you can always reach out to either the school counselor, your pediatrician. There's a lot of resources available. All of the government resources will work for children as well, and many private practices see children too. And for the adults, if you have any concerns, if you're starting to feel a bit overwhelmed, or if the symptoms continue, so a lot of times as we get back into routines, the difficulties will resolve on their own. But if you continue to have symptoms or continue to have difficulties, it might be worthwhile reaching out for help, for either for yourself, for your child, for family members. A lot of workplaces on island now as well, through HR, will have access to EAP programs where you could get, so there's the counseling services that's available through government, but a lot of times the larger organizations will have contracts with private practices as well, where they'll provide counseling support too.
All right. Thank you both. And I hope as we're listening, whether we're the principal of the school or the pastor, the parent, the politician, or whoever, we see resources, we see coming together, how that could help. Because this is not something that anyone wants to see repeated anywhere.
No.
And, it's a sense of prayerfulness that it's not worse, but a sense of positive, response if we're going to make it better. Hey, thank you all. All right, go to somebody else in the show. When we return, we invite you to join us. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I go in flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Find your dream car with a Cayman National Vehicle Loan. Enjoy 100% financing, up to 8-year repayment, and a 7% fixed interest rate for the first 5 years. For eco-friendly cars, we'll waive your commitment fee. This only applies to new vehicles. Call 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard the news? Digicel is back with exciting offers that are too good to resist. Activate one of our brand new prepaid or postpaid plans today and experience telecommunications like never before. With more data, dedicated entertainment options like Netflix, YouTube, Spotify, and endless social text data for all your favorite platforms. Digicel is here to make sure you stay connected and entertained. Whether you are on a prepaid or postpaid, you will also enjoy dedicated roaming data for the USA, Canada, and the Caribbean. It's all about value, and Digicel has got you covered.
The Ministry of Education invites eligible Caymanians to apply for a local scholarship for the 2024-2025 academic year. To apply for a local scholarship or learn more about the various scholarship offerings, please visit the Scholarship Secretariat Unit's website at www.moescholarships.gov.ky. Applications close on Tuesday, 30th of April, 2024. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Education.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us. And it's a pleasure now to talk about more things that encourages and involves and includes our community and recognizing why we get up in the morning and do what we do, because at the end of the day, it's about being able to provide, for our children and for those in this profession was even better. I like why we have YouTube today. people can join me and say, look at that, 3 handsome men. I mean,
2.5.
Come on, Simon's not that bad. Simon's not that bad. He's
See, I try and be modest, Sterling, and that's what you do back to me. That's what we're all.
But everyone that knows Roger can see why he smiles, man. Roger, welcome. Thanks for joining us, man.
Good to see you, Sterling, always.
And thanks, man. And bring along his good friend, and colleague, Simon Watson. Yeah. Simon, how were you today, man?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having us back again on this.
Back again.
Yeah.
This is perhaps for me one of those discussions where we in the wider community don't always appreciate that the work you do collectively, how it sort of informs and engages your society in every way. We may recognize construction from one aspect, either as that homeowner excited about moving into her new home, to that prospective investor looking at creating sales and getting the market reports, to the bank who is relying on those financing. But for many times, the idea of property and construction, just go about it almost unwillingly, unknowingly.
Well, I've been on Ireland now 6 years, and I know I'm never going to be Comandian. I'm always going to be a visitor. But I love this island to pieces. But it's odd in terms of how the real estate world has grown up here, because you've kind of got a hybrid of other bits of the world and how they operate.
Yeah.
In a very strange way.
Yeah.
So not a good thing in the UK, but we would have a chain where you'd have a buyer who's buying a property but got to sell his first, who's got to sell their property first, etc. That physically doesn't happen here. You just have a straight purchase and sale.
Yeah.
The construction industry has sort of grown up more probably around American models, I would say, than kind of other directions. So there's a lot that is sort of opaque in terms of people's understanding. I've been in real estate 46 years now, and a lot of what is here could be just tweaked and just maneuvered a little bit just to... But I just love the island anyway.
I'm intrigued by that, and that's where I think good discussion informs, Simon, as you wish to share, but I also want to ask your take on Roger's point.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it from the obviously evaluation perspective, as you know, I'm very involved in doing property evaluations, and I find that people sort of see us as a sort of necessary evil in order to get the mortgage, if you like, and we're sort of the last route, rather than coming to us saying, is this property worth buying, and what are the issues with this property? They'll put us right at the end and say, we've already agreed the price. Can we get the valuation to match that for the mortgage? So I think they're sort of missing out on a lot of sort of benefit that we can add to the process of buying a property, and the advice we can give. We're sort of I don't think people. I think again, going back to what Roger says about not necessarily being more from the US sort of basis, in that we're seen as just appraisers, rather people understand that we have 6 years minimum qualifications to become a chartered surveyor generally. And we have a lot more knowledge than just an American appraiser will have, effectively.
Right.
And I think that goes to the core of it, absolutely, Simon, because there's so much more that could be being used, could be being extrapolated, could be it could be so much better for everybody.
Right. And that is something that I'm glad you touched on, and I was hoping to get to at some point. But thank you for putting the table up front, because perhaps the Cayman marketplace is unique in that respect. We are a sort of British jurisdiction in terms of our common law, but we use a lot of the US practices even in our banking, and not recognizing how it may seem to us as the end user, but then the consequences of the professionals, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors has a global connotation with great import. But let me then ask, in the comparisons to the US, a building inspection has a word, a particular connotation, and how does that compare, if it in the comparison with what you may be doing in Cayman in preparing a building report, Roger?
Well, I don't think Cayman has got the. I don't mean this rudely in any way, shape, or form. Once you preface that, it's always going to sound this is not going to be good.
I don't mean, but
I don't think we have as good an inspection profession here as there could be. In the UK, we would have building surveyors who would come out and do structural surveys right the way down to house inspections and everything in between. Here, it's more kind of engineering that has grown into inspections, and I was dealing with a property where we were buying, and there was a crack down one of the walls, and trying to find alternate quotes of someone who could come out and do an inspection and sort of underwrite the work, or underwrite the obligations that could be faced with that. We found challenging. So that's what I mean in terms of some bits just haven't grown up. I don't think there's a building surveyor on the island, is there?
I mean, there's people who qualified as building surveyors, but whether they're
actually practicing
as such.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it goes back to what we were saying about North American in that, I mean, I don't know about Roger, but when I qualified originally with what was known as a general practice charter surveyor, and that was sort of changed.
I was the same.
That's right, and that was changed by the ICS to be valuation surveyor, which is quite a narrow description. But what we qualified in was, did involve, looking at buildings. We do sort of home buyers reports, they used to be known, which were a lot more in depth than the valuation reports here we do. And I think because of the US model, where you had appraisers just deal specifically very narrowly with the appraisal, and then the home inspectors go on and look at the sort of the services, etc. People understand that we actually qualified to do both aspects, but because of the nature of instructions generally from the banks, that side of it's not required. So we've sort of narrowed our reports to meet the bank's specific needs because they're our main clients, really.
And Roger?
I was going to say, it's kind of very linear how things work in this on this island. So in terms of the banking, if they're going to lend on a property, we will lend you on this basis. The moment you step outside of that, it's, well, no, we don't really do that. That's too complicated. That's not what it's about. And everything is kind of very much about form filling and box ticking and just going through the motions to get what's needed, as opposed to what else could be out there, what else could be done. Like as Simon said, going to the evaluator before you're going to be putting in the offer to make sure that the price is right. It's just a different way of handling things.
And this is why I think your conference coming up. Maybe more of us be aware of it, understanding the resource that we have, as opposed to it being driven a certain way. Not to pick on banks, whatever, but their concern, is that property of the value so that it can support their lending to satisfy whatever criteria that they have. But Simon, from that, is it then that we as the consumer, we don't really know? I give an example. I want to buy a property. I'll come to you, and I know that I can get a proper report, not necessarily from the engineering perspective in terms of structural integrity, but hey, are there any cracks in the foundation? Are there things that in the US model or even Canada, they might say, oh, that's a building inspector, but that's not the same sort of qualifications and training and expertise that I want if I'm going to be purchasing this place.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we're to blame for that as well, and that we haven't sort of educated everyone as to actually what we can provide. But there's also, it's first of all, I'd say there is a lot of interest in Cayman, that always has been in property.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, the fact that this is a local chapter, effectively, ICS Cayman, who's organised this conference, and we have more people attending this than we do the regional Caribbean one. I mean, it just shows how much interest there is in what's happening in property here. But I think we've sort of evolved. I've been doing valuations here for 30 years now, as you know, and and we've evolved to our reports to sort of the local needs, if you like, and maybe we should have expanded those and made people more aware of what services we can offer, really.
All right. Well, when we come back from the break, let's talk about the upcoming conference, and maybe at some point, as is always, my preference, the parents that are listening can talk to their children and show them that there are careers. They can be a lawyer and still get into proper valuation. They can do accounting instead of just quantitative surveying. That there's so much more, but sometimes we pigeonhole because we don't know of other alternatives.
Well, there's 7 disciplines within the RICS, right the way through from hydrographic surveying right the way through to quantity surveying and everything in between. So it's a very, very diverse profession.
I would like to talk about that a bit, and of course the conference and who can attend and why they should. And it's just knowledge. They say is empowering, equalizing, but man, can be powerful, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. When you come back, we invite you to please rejoin us. Stay tuned.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I'm going flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
Discover your dream home with Cayman National's home loan. Get up to 95% financing, repayment up to 40 years, and just a 0.5% commitment fee. Your interest rate? Depending on your risk factors, it'll be fixed or variable. Plus, you get a pre-approved credit card. This is a limited time offer. Dial 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
You don't sound too good there, Bobo.
Yeah, you know how it is. If the kids back in school, every other week they coming out with something, and then I catch it.
Sound like it catch you. But for real, brother, flu season is here and COVID is still around. You gotta stock up on things like medicine, vitamins, and minerals for you and the kids. You know what they say, prevention is better than cure.
At ValueMed, our pharmacists can help manage flu symptoms and provide guidance on vitamins and minerals to best support you and your family's overall health. Visit ValueMed Pharmacy on Walkers Road or Town, or WhatsApp your questions and prescription refills to ValueMed on Walkers Road at 926-1662 or WhatsApp ValueMed in Town at 916-5511. Live happy, live healthy with ValueMed Pharmacy.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Every day, thousands of residents use our roads, and every journey requires responsibility. Our actions behind the wheel can have serious consequences. So let's make a commitment to safety. The Cayman Islands government invites you to take the Safe Drivers Pledge. The pledge is our opportunity to show our dedication to creating a safer environment on our roads. First, visit gov.ky/road safety/pledge. Read and check all the boxes, fill in your name, and click submit. It's that easy. Let's make our roads safer together and say no more for 2024. Visit www.gov.ky/road safety for more information and to take the pledge.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back. And there are times when I want to joke and jest, and with Roger Southam and Simon Watson joining us, at least Simon, our best deference to Roger, we might say this is the 1,000th celebration of the upcoming conference. Should we say that?
Close.
Close to that. Okay, the 999. No, but RICS, right? The Royal Institution, right? Chartered Surveyors. With that designation after a person's name, my understanding that whether they're North America or some other part of Europe or even some remote place like Cayman, it would carry sense of credibility.
Yeah, it's a global organisation with over 120 different countries representatives. I mean, very, very big in Africa, Australia, Australasia, Singapore. I mean, it literally is a global.
Been going over 150 years, and the standards and the qualities that you're held to are of the highest standard in terms of ethics and behaviour, and it's a very serious thing to not look after a client, to mishandle client funds or anything of that nature. So it's a high standard.
And the reason why I appreciate you, with such humility, share is that here in Cayman, sometimes we don't appreciate the expertise and the professionalism that we have, and the the investor, the purchaser who was looking for a home here as a vacation or investment, sees that, knows what it is, we here may not quite appreciate it until we do. In talking about the conference, Roger, if I could start, you talk about the 7 sort of disciplines within that. I got a couple of questions to ask, but what are those 7 disciplines?
I knew you were going to do that, Sterling.
Yeah,
so we got land surveying, hydrographic surveying, chattels, fine arts, building, quantity surveyor. Minerals. Yeah, it's actually probably more than 7.
Yeah.
They honed it down to 7 titles, of which I should know the thing, but I can't.
No, but thank you. See, he would always pass the test and do well, right? And the reason is that just knowing it just a little bit and sort of preparing things like fine arts and chattels, you might say, well, what it has to do? But there are people here who have, say, a good personal collection of art.
Absolutely.
How do they value that, both for their estate? No, we don't have the tax inheritance and the like, but that person may be subject to that because of a citizenship or a business interest. But then you have chattels. How do you value that it has for government purposes relative to stamp duty or insurance when you're doing the things that we only are impacted by it when it affects us then and there? And we have it here.
Absolutely. And the insurance one is a fascinating one because at the moment we're seeing a hardening of them. Well, we've seen and continue to see a hardening of the market. So the valuation on insurance purposes is paramount to make sure you're insured for the right level. But more importantly, making sure if you kind of put an inflationary measure on your policy or on your building some insured, you could very quickly find yourself overinsured, and it's as bad to be overinsured as it is to be underinsured. So making sure you're valued right is.
I think everyone learned a big lesson after Ivan was the particular time, wasn't it, when we all learned about averaging and the importance of having the insured sum being correct. But I think memories have faded a bit since then. You know, as we saw with the the recent Nor'wester and new developments and things. I think that. It's important that we keep reminding people that regular reinstatement cost assessments for building insurance purposes are essential for everyone who owns property, and very, very important.
And the idea that with the insurances, there's a deductible. It's a 1%, 3%, 5%, and the impact that higher percentage may have on your reduced premium, meaning that you're carrying a certain sum on your own that you have to satisfy before your insurance kicks in. How does that affect what you're doing? Again, talking to people like yourselves may help that person. Can I then ask, again, appreciating that maybe we don't know, and perhaps in me asking this, not only will be for my personal education, but we go to the bank. We want to buy a property. This is going to be our first home. We're going to live in it. The bank says, okay, I'm going to give you a loan because it's not a mortgage. Finally, I think we can come in to accept that. Ooh, he had to go there. But it's true.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. But it comes back to that vanilla point in terms of everything. Very, very vanilla and linear.
Yeah, I got many people say to me, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." And I say, "Well, the little bit I understand, a loan and a mortgage are different. We don't have mortgages here. Now everybody's accepting that. That's nothing to do with the banks. That as us as a people not doing it. But I say that the legal opinion is paid for by the client, but it's for the bank's benefit. The valuation is paid for by the client, but it's addressed and for the bank." Roger?
The law is, absolutely. I think this kind of comes back to how the market's grown up, and it's grown up as it's grown up, and we can't go back and change it. But there are things that people need to be aware of. And at the moment, the buyers are not well represented because agents kind of end up on the seller's side, even if a buyer's gone to them. Now, there are ways you can appoint a buyer's agent, and there are buyer's agents out there. For a shameless plug, of which my realtor are one. Since I'm sitting here, I may as well say it. But there are others.
We're going to charge
there's Utopia, there's Capstone, there's all sorts. But anyway, the reason I say this is and I've had examples where I've taken clients to the bank and gone, the fees you're charging are outrageous. This is wrong. You're going to have to take some of these fees off. It's not right. And I've got the fees taken off for them. So there are things you can do, even though everybody says it's cast in stone and this is what it is and this is what it is. But I kind of don't understand how the market's grown up like it has, but it has. So it's now a question of how do we make it better for Caymanians? How do we get the best service for them? How do we get the best return for them? And it's ways and opportunities to do that.
Yeah. Simon, as part of the Cayman chapter committee members for, with the conference coming up, to Roger's point, attendees at this would tend to be your professionals, but is it who's?
Yeah, well, we're actually quite a small part of it, the actual RICS members. I mean, there's probably only about 70 approximately total. But when we expect to see, the usual turnout is really we'd see a lot of realtors, a lot of bankers, lawyers, a lot of the loans officers from the banks, have a separate interest in what's happening, engineers, but also we do really like to see people from the general Cayman public. Again, everyone's got an interest in what's happening in property in Cayman. It has a very big influence on our, what's happening here. A lot of property ownership in Cayman, more than a lot of other jurisdictions. The actual private rental market for Caymanians is actually fairly small, and there's a lot of property ownership. But we're also going to see again, anyone who has an interest in the built environment. So again, planning, people interested in planning, that type of thing, what's happening in zoning, etc. So yeah, there's always a great deal of interest locally, I believe, in what happens there.
Now, I'm told the conference is not that far away. So as we go into the break, who wants to tell me? When is it coming up? When is the conference?
15th of March.
15th of
the
March.
Ritz.
It's a Friday, isn't it?
It is a Friday. Yeah, funny enough. So we can wind nicely into the weekend. Ease gracefully.
All right. So it's at the Ritz on the 15th. What time?
Starts at 9 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got the Premier coming along and doing an introduction for us, which is delightful. And we're super proud to have her coming along. Then we've got panel sessions in the morning on AI and tech. The main theme of the conference is about tech and how that can change and adapt in Cayman for the real estate market. Then Simon's leading a panel on the market, and
we try and do this the conference itself is held every 2 years, but we always try and have a theme or topic, as Roger says. This is more technology orientated and its impact on property. But one of the plenary sessions is a market outlook and a panel discussion. So we're going to get representative from a real estate firm, from a bank, from a property lawyer, developer, and we'll basically have a discussion and a question and answer session as to what is happening in the market, which I think everyone's interested in seeing, especially after a year with the interest rate rises and things like that.
And as we come back from the break, could we invite you to share with us, more about the theme, if you wish?
Absolutely.
And some of the panel discussion, because as I listened and I appreciate, the information you shared prior. If you're in the audience, will the panelists all have the same perspective when they do differ? How does that translate into and then how does that inform your actions?
Yeah, we're delighted to.
All right. Phone lines, I think, are there if you have a question, 949-6990. There's the WhatsApp at 925-3261. And, it's an interesting opportunity for the 15th. And we'll tell you whether you can get, to be a participant. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Thank you.
Since 1976.
Covering Grand Cayman, Low Cayman, and right. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Check out our social media pages: Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, Radio Cayman Headline News.
With a look at your latest headlines, I'm Jevy Ebanks. The Fuel Review Select Committee met for the first time since it was formed during the second sitting of the third meeting of the 2023-2024 session of Parliament on February 27th. The committee convened its first meeting in camera on Friday, March the 1st at the House of Parliament, where the agenda included discussions on scheduling and terms of reference. Chaired by Honorable Johanny Ebanks, Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport and Development, the committee comprises of 8 members of Parliament, reflecting a diverse range of perspectives and expertise. The members are Honorable Johanny Ebanks, Chairman, Mr. Christopher Saunders, MP, Honorable Dwayne Seymour, MP, Honorable Kenneth Bryan, MP, Honorable Catherine Ebanks Wilkes, MP, Honorable William McKeever Bush, MP, Mr. Bernie Bush, MP, and Miss Barbara Connolly, MP. Grenadians have received an estimated EC $788.4 million in remittance during a 5-year period, according to annual reports of the Grenada Authority for Regulation and Financial Institutions. It said that the most of the remittances were sent in the year 2021, while in 2018 the island recorded the funds being sent abroad. The Haitian government has imposed a curfew across the French-speaking Caribbean community country in its first instance until Wednesday, as law enforcement authorities seek to regain control following last weekend's security situation that resulted in several inmates being freed by criminal gangs. Economy and Finance Minister Patrick Bevier said the decree takes into account the attacks perpetrated on the night of March the 2nd by armed gangs against two of the largest penitentiaries in the country. That's a look at your latest headlines. I'm Jevi Ebanks.
From Radio Cayman's newsroom, this is Headlines.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I'm going flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
Find your dream car with a Cayman National Vehicle Loan. Enjoy 100% financing, up to 8-year repayment, and a 7% fixed interest rate for the first 5 years. For eco-friendly cars, we'll waive your commitment fee. This only applies to new vehicles. Call 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Freedom, Cayman Rack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard the news? Digicel is back with exciting offers that are too good to resist. Activate one of our brand new prepaid or postpaid plans today and experience telecommunications like never before. With more data, dedicated entertainment options like Netflix, YouTube, Spotify, and endless social text data for all your favorite platforms. Digicel is here to make sure you stay connected and entertained. Whether you are on a prepaid or postpaid, you will also enjoy dedicated roaming data for the USA, Canada, and the Caribbean. It's all about value, and Digicel has got you covered.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining us in much as we invite you to listen with a certain extent invitation, we got 2 phone options, 9496-990 and the WhatsApp 925-3261. We are diligently working on getting that up and running so that you can have increased access. Thank you for listening. It's really a pleasure to have this discussion on upcoming conference on the 15th of March, a few Fridays hence at the Ritz-Carlton, 9 a.m. at the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, sort of came as Property and Construction Conference. It goes well together. So to Roger Sutherland and Simon Watson, thank you both for joining us. As we get into the discussion again, I just want to ask specifically about the conference, but the attendees. Simon, you listed out a number of people. I can see it. And even that person who is thinking of, what is my retirement fund going to look like? I'm going to build a fourplex, may just have, a small rental. This could benefit that person.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I see it's being a wider range of people than just people actually employed within the property sector. It's basically anyone who has an interest in what's happening in property in Cayman. So the main theme is obviously more tech based, but we do have the market outlook session, and there will be discussions in respect to more of a breakout sessions in the afternoon, where we're more fine tuning this or the seminars that we're having on.
Yeah, I want to ask a bit about the theme as well as the panel discussions. We're seeing an increase in the deployment of technology in much, not just the use of AI, they're talking about it, not just the computerization of offices in terms of how they digitize their files or the like, but almost thinking of using technology in property valuations and the like. Is that possible? How would it be used? Give us a perspective. I mean, how is technology? We can see drones with photographs. We can see infrared being used in terms of building envelopes to determine, are they sealed otherwise, but what else?
It's everywhere. So in terms of the measuring, the setting out of the construction sites, the ordering materials, the manufacture of materials, the sort of modern technology that is coming down the line for construction is getting to within a nano millimeter of dimension. So you've got stuff that can literally just plonk on site. You've got bathrooms that are modular. So it's all prefabricated and put in place. That is where construction's going. In terms of AI in real estate, you've got ChatGPT and other manuals like that are being used. Modules like that are being used for broking services, where people write the descriptions and let the AI take hold of that. You've got plethora of programs coming through on the tech side for the day-to-day work, from management systems to valuation systems to report writing to right the way through to cryptocurrency and everything beyond.
Yeah. I mean, I would always say that people forget that in Cayman, actually, we have one of the most advanced geographic information systems that the government have put in place 15, 20 years ago now, which allows us access to every single property transaction on a mapping system. We can zoom in there, we can look at sort of the contours, the elevations, even flooding maps available on there. But every single property transaction is there, whereas other jurisdictions where I might do business, then you basically have to really work hard to get comparables, from local agents, etc. Here we have basically 100% perfect knowledge of what's been sold. Yeah. So, and that's been in place for a long time here. So, we shouldn't consider ourselves a backhorse. So this is we're leading the way in that respect, and I think we'll point out in some other ways at the conference how we are as well. Yeah,
I'm glad you referenced that, because those who have seen the government's investment in GIS. Not just the careers of the civil servants who are being trained, but the utilization by industry professionals, but even prospective investors, how they can benefit. So the land registry system that we have relative to getting a perfect title, being able to look at the property and see its history and understanding whether there are any issues with easements and the like, we take for granted.
Absolutely.
Whereas in many sort of developed places, it's a bit of a search, no pun intended.
Absolutely. I have an office in the British Virgin Islands, and the differences between the two, considering they're both British dependent territories, it's actually quite shocking how far advanced we are and how far behind, I wouldn't say behind they are, but
Yeah.
you know, they still have to do the old thing of going to the land registry and pulling the physical parcel files in order to see what something sold for, which was the case when I was at Land and Survey in the early 90s. They are still doing that there, whereas we are now have access to everything on the NIS system. So it's I think the government here have done a fantastic job in that respect.
That coin with technology on one side, can I flip it over for a second? The old days, the Tower Building, even here, you go, there's a counter attendant, there's literally a parcel file, and you thumb through it, you get your little paper cuts, you see the transfer of land, the mortgages, and it gets bigger. To what extent, though, potential could we be putting that consumer, that individual small business at risk of not being able to access that information, even though it's there electronically, but not being able to?
Well, that's a pricing thing, isn't it, in terms of where the government's going to charge for the service. But I think in terms of accessibility, Simon's absolutely right. The system here is streets ahead. I mean, the UK has a good system, but it's archaic by comparison.
Yeah.
They don't have a map that you can zone into and zoom into and look at to find out the parcel and the site. You've got to know the address. Now, okay, addresses are slightly more sophisticated in the UK because everything narrows down in a way on the postcodes that we don't hear. But the map and the abilities on it are phenomenal.
It's funny, I still remember I used to work at the Tower Building and the old files we used to have.
I miss them.
And we used to actually record every property transaction on little maps, and we'd write down what it sold for, and you'd have to pull the files. And I mean, how we've advanced since then is actually quite amazing. Yeah. And the fact that other jurisdictions in the Caribbean are still doing exactly that same system. So I think everyone should have a pat on the back for how things have progressed here.
I'm glad that not just the land registry system in terms of being able to look at it and you can see, well, the title to this property, is it absolute, is it but the way the information has been converted and the uptake by the industry and the community, it's maybe one of those things that in Cayman we take for granted. We assume if we have it as elsewhere, not to realize that we are leading in many instances. If I can end in sort of saying that, then ask, maybe Roger, you want to start with it, but talk about the panel discussions.
Yeah.
Because that's where we get a chance to. Are the discussions, sequential? Are they happening at the same time?
Right. So the way we structure the conference is in the morning, everybody is together in general session. So it's on AI and tech, cryptocurrency transactions in real estate, and the wider sphere of tech and property. We then go into a market assessment, as we said. After the lunch break, we then have 3 sessions running at the same time. So we got the theming around government are doing a session. We've got a session on quantity surveying technology, and we've got a management session. And then step 2 is another 3 sessions, which is exploring security and electrical, facility management software, and building information management systems. So you pick which one you want to go to, unless you're incredibly fast, in which case you can hop into all 3 at the same time. But that would be kind of logistically a bit challenging. But yeah, so you pick one of the 3 for the afternoon sessions. But the idea of that is that over the course of an hour, you can get into more depth in that kind of discussion because it's more of a narrow focus than it is a general topic.
Yeah. I mean, looking at it, whether you're the bank sending some of its loans officers, so to speak, or the solicitor who's into conveyancing coming across, or even the schools deciding we got some A-level students or high school students who may be budding accountants, architects, engineers, send them across as well. Or that child who's not quite sure.
If the schools wanted to send some of the students along, we'd be delighted to do a special deal for them. We'd be delighted, because I think that would be all to encourage in terms of getting an exposure to the real estate market.
And this is where I think, yes, that may not this time around be logistics possible, but our parents listening, speaking through our PTAs or to the tutor in the class and saying, how do we encourage our children by making them aware of the careers that they're thinking of can be more than just a lawyer sitting in one of the big firms or the accountant. Likewise,
Absolutely. I mean, the ICE have been very good at attending its various school fairs, community fairs, but still, I think people, see the sign and still don't quite understand and just wander on past as the more exciting, careers out there. So, I think, anyone who wants to get in contact, I assume with Roger or myself, we're always happy to discuss the routes to qualification. Again, I said on our business buzz last week, I've actually have a ticket aside as well if there's a young commander who wants to come through and attend the conference to explore career advertising, surveying, advertising.
That works too.
It's about advertising. But these we need to reach out to local commanders and find out,
if I might ask, right, looking at some of the panel discussions and
there's no session on advertising, sorry.
No. That's next year's conference, knowing that it's held every 2 years. So next year's conference, specifically for you alone. This is where laughter makes, the profession that much more enjoyable.
Isn't it?
You come to work, you don't have to do your job.
Come on, Sterling. You're the same philosophy. You've got to have fun what you're doing.
Yeah, but be careful. The people that peers or checks think if you're having fun, they might think, they're not working.
Oh no, you're always working hard, but always nice at having fun along the way.
Oh my brother always says, a bad day fishing is better than a good day of work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, but I wanted to ask, if we were sitting here and we were to expect, if you're so inclined to engage me, what some of those insights would be from your panelists relative to the future and the current market trends, and two things. Will we look at it and say, oh, well, it's just a Cayman thing, or will we see the global impact? And then secondly, what potential surprises, I'm not asking look into crystal ball, but it's just your view if you want to share.
You'll get both, actually, in terms of the market panel is very much about Cayman and Cayman's market. Mm-hmm. The AI tech panel at the start is very much about global as well as local. So there are cryptocurrency deals being done for buying property on island and have been for a wee while now. We've got the lady who has innovated that speaking at the conference, along with others on the panel that have very innovative and unique perspectives of how to take the tech and how to take the market forward, which I think it would behove everybody to be aware of. We perhaps should be taping that and actually putting it out on the internet for people, because
it's Laura Birrell, she's the CEO of Parallel, who basically did the first transaction here.
But there are changes happening, and there are paradigm shifts occurring, and we are becoming more global, whether we like it or not. And it's a question of how do we embrace that but keep the community and the environment that we love so dearly on this island, and make sure that that doesn't subsume, but we can actually make our lives easier and better.
And this is where I think having events like this not only gets the industry reconnected, but to see whether those informal discussions that take place actually resonate with the wider audience.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of networking sessions. We have coffee breaks during the day, and then there'll be a networking session, drinks in the evening afterwards. And I think those are just as key as the actual presentations in some ways in having discussions about the direction of surveying and property in the islands.
And you referenced one of the speakers, and I remember reading the press release after she was here. The use of cryptocurrency and those type of transactions were unprecedented at that time, but we've seen it increasingly. We also see, sort of from the regulatory perspective, well, how is that being utilized? What is the impact of that? What does that look like? These discussions have to inform the direction of where the industry might go. Could we ask a little bit more information on some of the notable speakers who will be presented?
Yeah, well, basically got, like I say, the CEO of Parallel, Laura Birrell, she's the basically was behind the first Bitcoin transaction property. We also have Chris Smith, who's the head of ICS Americas, the chair, I believe is the title. Yes. So he'll be speaking about the role of what's happening in property on a regional scale, effectively. What else we got on the main panel? We have Roger himself as well.
My mind's gone blank as we started that. Then on the market panel, you've got
Yeah, so on the market panel, we've got Jeremy Hurst from RG, Kadeen Coban from RBC, Adam Johnson from Applebee's, and a couple of the analysts from DART who give us a presentation of insights on their analysis of what's been happening in the property market as well.
Mhm.
And I'll be giving a brief review of the Cayman Property Review, which I do, as you know, produce every year. So we'll be open with that, sort of seeing what has happened, and then we'll move on to what we expect to happen, which I think will have great interest for people.
If I might ask, and sort of as we get nearer to the end of our discussion, we talked a lot about sort of valuations in the property, but it's also property and construction.
Mm.
And we're seeing increasingly uptake of innovation and the use of technology in construction globally in terms of innovative materials. But some of that, what was it, last week? There was a International Builder Show in Las Vegas, and many here attended, and we've seen new products hoping to come to market, some being expanded. That probably translates into a business venture and an opportunity that may require government to say, well, we'll recognize this method, this material. So from the construction part of the conference, anything you can share, listeners?
But yeah, I mean, there's a number of different construction methods and materials that are looking to come into Ireland, which is interesting. But from the conference perspective, we're looking more at the tech side and what computer systems and innovation is coming in to make the ability to build easier, the measuring, the taking off, etc., the land's information system and those sides. So it's more this time round, it's more about the tech side. But there's probably a whole conference that could be done about materials and construction methods and where that's moving towards.
Mhm.
And obviously from the Caribbean perspective, as much as the Cayman perspective, having materials and methods that meet the needs and necessities of the hurricanes, the earthquakes, the windstorm, the wind, etc., becomes a whole nother measure where people are kind of looking at things and saying, yes, it will meet the requirement, but until it's actually tested, who really knows how it's going to stand up? But there's a few very exciting innovations that are looking to come into the market here.
I mean, I just said I'm thinking back to the early days of ICFs, for instance. Right? Some people were, oh, this is the panacea. Others were, not so sure. And then you got the local sort of knowledge and familiarity with particular construction methods. Bamboo, for instance. We're watching that in some jurisdictions. Europe is saying, well, we don't have the skill set, but this is something that is good. It's actually good strength. It's been used, for centuries in other places.
Insane strength. In China, they do their scaffolding in bamboo.
Exactly.
And some of the scaffolding structures are just...
But this is where, and I thank you for sharing, where as a marketplace, if we come together with these conferences, just like we would with international conferences, but if they're based here with the local market, you get to exchange ideas. I can only see potential benefits to the possible changes in legislation, regulation, to the adoption or even deletion of certain things because they're no longer as effective. Simon?
Yeah, and I think there's a very few opportunities for people from different sort of areas of the property market to get together in general in Command. So something like this, I know it's been embraced. I mean, we did the first one 12 years ago, and the idea was just let's see how successful it is and whether people are interested. And it's always been a great success for that very reason. I think that people don't really have these opportunities to come together and discuss different ideas.
And the fact that you do it every 2 years, these biennial conferences, I think, get a chance for things to emerge. Is there a trend, and was that just a little blip? Is that something that's going to be transformative going forward? Maybe is
I think if it was tried every year would be too much in terms of the work that goes into the organising. It could become extremely repetitive. Whereas I think that kind of biennial cycle makes it different enough and informative enough and engaging in a way that people want to know, and that's where one of its draws are.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. I think that was a decision made not only because of the amount of work it takes to put together, and we all obviously have their own businesses to run, etc., but because we wanted a sort of reasonable enough gap to see changes happen to be able to report on. Otherwise, you're just going over the same old ground.
That's why we look at a 2-year-old, much more different than a 2-day-old child.
Exactly.
Too soon?
Not an analogy I've thought of, Stereling, but by goodness, you find them.
I do. Man. I have this a book of analogies. That's reference. No, you know what? 2-drink minimum tonight I'm performing. But as we close out our discussion, let me then ask if are there space still available if people want to register, and how would they?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, basically, tickets are available online. We're using Eventbrite to purchase the tickets, so it's not done locally. So if you want to buy tickets, ICSKman24.eventbrite.com, and the tickets for the general public are $275 US. And there's a corporate ticket. I had one of the banks this morning call me saying they're interested in a corporate ticket, where you get 11 tickets for $2,750 US.
So 10% discount. Absolute.
Buy 10, get one free.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
You got to talk to our marketers.
There's not so much on the island that's doing 10% free, is there?
No, but this is where I'm grateful that industry professionals like yourselves will come together, because it's going to benefit even me, who is a consumer who's not there directly, seeing not just the professionalism, the trends and the changes, but also appreciate that it sharpens each other. It's going to make each more and more competitive.
Well, I one of the things I would love to see is the whole kind of real estate market in the widest sphere kind of agglomerate and start working together and all build. So the RICS profile that brokers are saying you need to get your valuation done earlier, not just waiting for the banks to tell you to get the valuation done, that there is actually an interplay between all the various elements and aspects. And I think the market would benefit greatly from everybody just embracing each other.
Something that I don't think enough of us appreciate. You can actually have competition when you're collaborative. We see the two things as almost mutually exclusive. When to me,
In the UK, the craziest thing about the real estate market is that it will all work together and it will all share information together. And there's a great analogy that any property arrangement will end up organising a dining club as a result of where it's come from, so it can keep meeting and keep re-engaging. But it's almost that kind of philosophy where you're getting the cohesion and 1 and 1 equaling 3, as opposed to thinking that it's going to be detrimental to be engaged and embracing.
Yeah, it benefits everyone in the market. The better knowledge they have of what's happening in the markets, effectively.
Indeed. Thanks, Jess, for coming on.
It's a pleasure. Great to see you.
If it is at all possible, as you shared potential of putting some of that stuff after the conference for us to access through your website, if you can come back on, whether both of you or someone else.
Always happy to, yeah.
And we'll speak to where the industry is, where it's going to go, given the conference and the analysis, but also sharpen our parents' minds relative to engaging our children into future careers. Really appreciate
always happy to, Thank you.
We'd love to.
All right, so on the 15th of March, it's a couple of Fridays away, still not too late, but if you wait, you might miss it.
Absolutely.
All right. It's a Monday. Can you believe it?
I know. Another weekend gone.
Yeah, I love every day ending in a Y. I'm so thankful to be a part of each one. All right, to my good friends, join us tomorrow right after Talk Today, and we're going to engage you further. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama. And now, Barbados. And Digicel, Cayman's bigger, better network. And Doctors Hospital. Peace of mind is important when life happens. Doctors Hospital, always there for you. Call 949-6066.